Hello and welcome to Beauty is in the Eye of the Algorithm. I'm RJ Talyor. I'm the founder of Backstroke, and I'm your host for today. We're going to let about 2 or 3 more minutes pass before we start today's live stream, but really excited to spend the next 30 minutes with you. So thanks for making the time. I'll talk to you in just a second. Hello and welcome to today's live stream. Beauty is in the Eye of the Algorithm. I'm RJ Tallier. I'm the founder of Backstroke, and this topic is near and dear to my heart as somebody who has a master's degree in creative writing and has worked in the tech space for almost 21 years now. So it's an interesting world that we're living in, especially in AI and generative AI. And I want to share with you some of my thoughts, and why don't we dig in? First off, so excited that you could join us. Again, RJ, I'm the founder of Backstroke, but I want to start somewhere very different and want to introduce you to Sage. And Sage is a miniature poodle who the Westminster Kennel Club deemed 2024's best in show. And so what you're looking at is the best in show in accordance to their criteria, which are temperance, appearance, temperature, temperate, appearance, temper, and their posture. And so this is effectively what many regard as the most beautiful dog in the world. So Sage is the most beautiful dog in the world. Contrast that with Wild Thing, who was deemed the world's ugliest dog in 2024, which is a contest that's done in California every year. It's interesting because we have a dog that looks like Sage as the most beautiful, a dog that looks like Wild Thing as the ugliest, and we end up with questioning really what is beauty and is it truly in the eye of the beholder, which is a phrase that came out in this book, which is called Molly Bond, and it was written in the 1800s by Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. And I've read a lot of books like this. I've not actually read her specific book, but she's an Irish author that's really coined the phrase "beauty's in the eye of the beholder." And in an AI-driven world, the question that I have for us is AI actually driving those decisions, and is beauty in the eye of the algorithm? And to get down into that, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is beauty? Lots and lots of things seem beautiful. These are some examples of different aspects from fashion, from art, from literature, models, as well as celebrities that many people think are beautiful. And if you dig in on one of them, which is this Van Gogh piece, we might look at it and say, well, I think this is beautiful, or I think it's not beautiful. And you might end up with some sort of human response like, well, this makes me feel awestruck, or I might describe it in my appreciation of its beauty and asking subsequent questions like, what is in this picture? Is it an impressionist? Or I remember this one, I had this dream about it, or actually I have an allergy to sunflowers. You might have a really human response to a piece of art, while a machine would have a very different response to something that is also beautiful, where it might start categorizing what's in the picture, or it might ask different dimensions of it, like what are the parameters of the art, and what are the most similar pieces of art. You're probably very familiar with the way that this looks like, but it can tell you all sorts of things about it. But it's not asking about dreams or questions or responses. Instead, it's a machine or AI-driven response. And so really what the machine is trying to do is apply some sort of data-based approach, or some sort of memory-based approach. And they might be using the Fibonacci sequence, which, if you don't remember from grade or high school days, that's when the series of numbers equals the sum of the two preceding numbers. So an example is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, etc. And it actually appears very much in nature naturally in all sorts of things, ranging from shells to sunflowers to people. And then humans have actually replicated what they call the golden ratio in the construction of things that are appearing to be beautiful, like the Mona Lisa or the Parthenon or the pyramids. And the golden ratio is a way that sometimes scientists and humans have described the relationship between two numbers as 1.68, but it's actually the way that we say, oh, that's definitively beautiful. And we know that things like Romanesco, this actually appears in Romanesco in the pieces of the vegetable. And it appears in humans, where people like Rihanna or Marilyn Monroe or James Dean are perceived as very beautiful because their facial structure honors the golden ratio. So we can look at people and celebrities like this and say, well, these people are beautiful because they honor the golden ratio, or because it aligns with the Fibonacci sequence. But when you look at people like me, you wonder, like, well, is he beautiful, or like, are people beautiful? And that's when we start saying, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But machines are actually trying to answer that question pretty aggressively right now. And just for fun, I actually downloaded 3 different apps onto my iPhone. They're all available in the App Store. And I uploaded a selfie of myself. Man, this is a great shot of me, and then asked it to run its algorithm to see if this machine thought I was beautiful. And it was interesting what it said. First off, I got an error, which is sort of just funny. But then it started rating me on all sorts of different attributes that it had decided what beautiful looks like. Now, I got a B+, which is good, so I'm pretty pleased with that. But then it started looking at all sorts of other different dimensions of my face. Things like my mid-face ratio or my mouth-to-face ratio. I scored especially well on eye spacing. But somebody had to decide that these are the dimensions that the algorithm is going to look at when it's deciding whether or not I'm beautiful. Like my eye ratio apparently was good. My lip ratio, my eyes are a little saggy apparently. But overall I got a B+. So I my ego isn't too much of a hit. The second app that I tried out was this one. And again, I got another error, which I think is really funny when you upload your face here. But ultimately, I got a beauty score of 6.41 out of 10, according to this beauty scanner. 6.41. It's a little bit less than a B+, but I guess I'll take it. But then it started asking who I was most like. And based on the algorithm, it said, oh, I look most like Lionel Messi, which Okay, I wouldn't mind being one of the best athletes in the world, but that's who it thinks I look like. In addition, the algorithm detects that I look like John Cena. So again, Messi, Cena, I can see it. Can you? But the question is, would the algorithm also say that Messi and John Cena were 6.41, 6 out of 10? That's a D. Well, I don't know. So we can question the algorithm's approach to beauty and then go from there. It did note that I had small drooping eyes with a narrow face, so that was scored against me. I'm 45 years old, so I guess maybe I should have done this when I was younger. Who knows? The third app that I asked about its algorithmic beauty was this one. I uploaded the picture. It looked at all sorts of different attributes. It gave me a 79 score, and it told me that it looks similar to Matt Damon. So I'll take that. It also started looking at things like the golden ratio and other dimensions of my face. So, and then it recommended a spring palette for me to wear. I wonder if it's because I'm wearing kind of a peach or a pink shirt in the picture, but it started actually going to the next step, which is to not only assess my beauty, but then recommend the palette that I should be wearing. So this flannel doesn't quite fit into that palette, but maybe in the spring I'll invest in some more pastels. So, the overall question in just doing an exercise like that is to understand what criteria are being used by an algorithm to decide whether something is beautiful. And then the second question that we have to ask ourselves is, do I agree? Like, do I personally agree? Are we going to honor that machine's version of what the truth is or not? And really, to understand that, you have to understand what the algorithm is. And, a lot of times we say as marketers, algorithm this, algorithm that, algo, but really what is an algorithm? If you're a fan of Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix, Titus Andromedon has his own definition, which is very comical, but oftentimes I find that marketers don't quite know exactly what an algorithm is, or what some of these terms are that data scientists and machine learning experts are using every day to make decisions about what is perceived as beautiful and what is then served up in our feeds, in our inboxes, in our collective experience as marketers, as well as just humans here. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time to kind of pop through these terms to make sure that we on this call as marketers can speak intelligently about these terms, which are really dictating marketing right now. So the first one is computer vision. And computer vision is simply the way that a machine observes a picture or a set of pictures, and then it applies labels to things. So just think about it's the way that a computer sees. It would look at an email like this and identify that there's a logo, there's an image, there's a product description, there's a bike, those types of things. And computer vision can do all sorts of things, but one thing it can't do accurately is spot discrepancies in things like this. So if I were to ask you to, as a human, to use your own eyes and your own brain to find the pack of puppies here, you would be easily able to find it and discern it from the cookies and cream ice cream. Machine learning algorithms cannot do this at the same level of accuracy that humans can. Same deal with fried chicken and golden doodle puppies. Same deal with sleeping dogs and bagels. I'm a little hungry. Those look pretty good to me. The same challenge occurs with guacamole and parrots. So machines are using intelligence that they're gathering from computer vision to make assessments on beauty or on what is supposed to be served up. And a lot of times their data is mislabeled because the machine is not good as our human brains yet in using computer vision in the same way that machines can do it. So just something to really think about is as you go into making decisions based on algorithms or algorithmic beauty, making sure that you understand what is the algorithm underneath it and what are the gaps. This doesn't mean you shouldn't use an algorithm. It just means that you need to understand what are the risks or the flaws. Because while you can take a look at this giant chair, which is an art piece, machine learning algorithms, 4 different ones, looked at it and said, "Ooh, that's a guillotine," or "That's a turnstile," or "That's a forklift." But the fourth one actually knew that it was specifically a chair, and you do too. So computer vision, the team down at the IU, Indiana University Computer Vision Lab, has put together these slides and allowed us to use them. But it can detect most things, all sorts of different animals and subspecies that you or I probably wouldn't know. It can take a look at a crowd of people and see people within it, even back at the back. This computer vision is pretty astounding. It can track objects in motion. So it uses bounding boxes and understanding objects that are going in movement. And what they're doing at at Indiana University is actually strapping these kind of GoPro devices with parents' permission, of course, to understand how the human brain can start to identify things in the way that a machine might be able to do it. So it can track objects, it can identify multiple objects at the same time. It can also, computer vision can describe a scene. So it can look at the top left image and say, hey, I'm typing on a computer, or things like answering questions. It does well, like what sport is being shown in the bottom right? Well, it's a Frisbee. So, computer vision is very good at doing things like this. It also has its own inaccuracies. So beware of that. It can create alternative realities, and you're seeing this already, I'm sure, in all sorts of different models that are out there, taking pictures and making them realistic, taking zebras and making them horses, taking one scene and changing its season. Of course, those are all things that are powered by a computer vision model combined with other algorithms that are powered by AI. So one thing I wanted to highlight here, and I'm not sure you're able to see it, but this is a TikTok video of what seems to be Keanu Reeves playing Ding Dong Ditch in an apartment building. Now, Keanu Reeves is not playing Ding Dong Ditch in an apartment building, but this is a TikTok that has amassed a ton of different views, and it goes to show the extent of how computer vision and these GANs can really imagine their own reality. So that's really the core, it's computer vision. The second term for you to know is NLP, or natural language processing. And it's the way that a machine understands what content is, what textual content is saying. So it might look at this Pearl Izumi email and be able to understand immediately what is for sale. We actually worked with Pearl Izumi at Backstroke, and we had the machine generate 5 different subject lines and asked it which of these subject lines would perform best for this email. And if you are on the phone, I'd love for you to take a look at these 5 subject lines and ask yourself, which of those would I have picked to drive the most revenue per email? Would it be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, or number 5? And you can guess yourself there, but this is what marketers are asked to do all the time, which is effectively natural language processing, but we in our brains just call it decision making. And if you guess number 3, you would be right in terms of what drove the highest revenue per email. It's actually the third one. But this is actually a trick question, because each different audience within their list performed differently based on who they were. So the Gen Y folks loved the first one. Women, who make up 22% of their list, preferred the second. Gen X preferred the third. 65 plus, those baby boomers, preferred the fourth, and the low frequency buyers preferred the fifth. So in effect, you could have chosen any of the 5 and been correct. And your natural language processing in your brain would have maybe been clouded by things of your experience or things that you've seen in the past. But the machine can help us understand who these people are, what they prefer, what's predicted to perform, and then generate content that's predicted to perform. And at the core, it's using algorithms that are based on things like this Plutchik wheel of emotions, which help us understand what of the 8 primary emotions are driving people to do the things that we want them to do. And we know that different generations have different preferences, ranging from joy to sadness to trust. And we as a brand or a marketer would say, ooh, I would never put a sad emotion in my email to promote a product. But what we actually find is that sadness, along with surprise and anticipation, are the top 3 drivers of email engagement for Generation Z, which is kind of shocking to me. But if you dig in a little bit more, the Gen Z folks actually really prefer anticipation more than all of the other generations, and sadness really indexes high. In fact, Gen Z loves very emotional things. Compared to the other generations, their positive and like extremely positive, extremely negative emotions really drive performance in email campaigns. This is what Backstroke's experts at, which if you dig in, it's actually pretty not surprising because Gen Z is very anxious, very stressed, already burned out, and they're not even 25 years old. But it's why we see things like artists like Taylor Swift and the Tortured Poets Department, which is the most, I would say, emo thing that I've ever seen. Although she's an excellent artist, it really taps into that sadness or that emotion that resonates across Gen Z. So all of this goes under the bucket of natural language processing. So think about NLP or natural language processing as you think about how I'm processing information and am I swayed by it as a marketer in a way that is in line with the generations I'm speaking to. The third piece here is, of course, an algorithm. An algorithm is just a fancy way to say a math equation that has an outcome, right? And so in this case, we're seeing an algorithm that's predicting an 80% match for the image on the left versus an 82% match for the image on the right, and a 96 match on the left, 82% on the right, and a 76% match for the audience member on the bottom. So these are just algorithmic determinations of what might perform best for the individual who's getting this specific email. And an algorithm is, in its true definition, it's a finite sequence of instructions. It's going to solve a problem or perform a computation. So it's a math problem effectively. And don't let any data scientist or machine learning engineer try to complicate it more than that. It's the way that machine does math. So that is a broad set of what an algorithm is. There's also something called fine tuning, and we're going to hear that more and more and more. So fine tuning one of these large language models or larger algorithms to do things like compose emails. That's exactly what we're doing at Backstroke. But fine tuning needs to be tuned specifically for not just the medium, but also the channel and the industry, and then other dimensions, maybe even your customers. So you might hear someone say, I'm going to fine tune an algorithm specifically for your customer base. That's a great thing because it's going to take their model from this large model that can apply to lots of things and make it really applicable for you. The last thing is what is called Louvain community detection. I heard this a few times and was thinking, what am we talking about? But what it is an algorithm that identifies groups. It's an unsupervised data science algorithm that identifies groups of people that may or may not have similar attributes in the traditional sense. So I, as a marketer, am used to doing things like, oh, show me all my subscribers who are men or who are women or who make X amount of dollars or who have opened or clicked in the last X days. Those are all kind of traditional if-then segments that I might create as a human. But Louvain community detection is an AI model, is one of many. It's just one of the named ones that looks across a subscriber base and says, hey, these subscribers act in certain ways that may or may not be apparent to you with your human brain. Let's group those people together and then subsequently do it for other groups. So it's going to find communities within the data set that may or may not be logical or traditional in the way that I've marketed in the past. And I bring this up because it's a more complex and maybe surprising way to group data. So something to keep in mind. And if you're working with a data scientist, ask them to apply this model. You know, Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI, famously said in March that 95% of what marketers are using agencies and strategists to do it's going to be easily, nearly instantly, and almost at no cost handled by AI. And that is a kind of a shocker of a statement. If I'm an agency, that makes me pretty worried, except for if I'm an agency that's going to adopt these AI and really help our customers through, then that's a big win. At Backstroke, we think, wow, like 95%, wait, but what about like all of these deep fakes that are out there causing all sorts of tumultuous issues? Or what about the perfect story that we saw with some of these attributes these algorithms. If you look in the bottom left, it looks at this image, and the AI algorithm is saying that this is a teddy bear, or the one in the bottom on the bottom row in the middle says, "Oh, this is a spoon," or my favorite is the bottom right that says it's a man holding a cat in his mouth, but it looks to be maybe somebody's leg, I think. AI can't tell a perfect story completely. It can't engineer an airplane, and it can't make ethical choices because all of these humans are actually not real. These have been created on a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com. And the questions that emerge from this are really human questions. So if we think about 95% of what agencies or marketers are doing is going to be automated by AI, I think that's a big, provocative, and interesting statement. We're certainly leaning into that at Backstroke, but it's a little bit of a false flag in that there's a lot to be worked out still that humans have to really consider. Now, we might look at our competitors and call back to one of my favorite bands from the 90s, which is the Cranberries, who had that album. It was called Everybody Else is Doing It, so why can't we? Why don't we just do it? Well, there's all sorts of questions to ask, like legal or copyright risks, brand management. How do I make sure that my data doesn't get exposed to everybody? Bias. There's no way to explain some of these models, like living community detection I just showed you. It doesn't really make sense that I've grouped these people together. Taking a look at adoption versus what your policy is. And there's this whole world of shadow AI out there, meaning that people are using their personal devices that are not been approved and uploading company data into them. And it's creating issues or problems in brands all over the place. So these are the types of things that we as human marketers are going to have to figure out. And then, AI won't take your job. AI will take your job. This is a question mark for me. If I'm looking at images like this, if you look closely, you can see that these handshakes are pretty weird with extra fingers and not really looking like a specific a person holding another human hand. But this is the type of thing that I, as a human, can look at and say, well, this looks weird, or this doesn't look beautiful, or man, the algorithm really messed this up. So if I were to give an AI bot only some sort of creative brief that said, hey, I want you to track our target customer, who is a Gen Z woman who shops for health food, and she should be athletic and represent a diverse customer base, the machine might generate something like this and say, hey, here's your image that you should use in your ad campaign or in your marketing campaign, your email. And the questions emerge like, well, what gender is this person? Is this a male or a female or other? Is this a person who is young or Gen Z, and who determined that? Is this person white or black or Hispanic or Asian or none of these? What race is this person? What ethnicity is this person? And who decided what that ethnicity was? And the most triggering one for me is body type. And if this person is athletic, that's what our brief said. Is this an athletic body? What does an athletic body look like? And these are all things that algorithms have now been programmed to look for. And we as marketers have to be stewards of an ethical and moral approach, in addition to one that represents our brand. And if we're letting an algorithm generate or decide that this image is the one that best represents all those attributes, there's some questions that we've got to probably answer. And you don't want to probably answer those on blast on social media, but we've got to answer them for ourselves and be able to defend them. So I wanted to ask ChatGPT 4.0, is this person beautiful? And what's interesting is that ChatGPT dodges the question and says, I can't make judgments about that. But then I said, well, is this person a potential for our marketing campaign, that creative brief I just showed you? And it comes back with a big old thumbs up. Yes. And it says, hey, yeah, you should definitely use this. And then it starts to actually provide strategic recommendations down on the bottom, like you could use this in an Instagram ad, which is pretty wild. And then because I'm, self-obsessed, I guess, I asked, am I beautiful? Am I beautiful? Am I the right? Is this image one that could work? And it's funny because ChatGPT actually did have a strong recommendation. It may not be the best fit for Gen Z. It's making a determination on my face and on what it thinks could be best for our creative brief. So it's an interesting world on AI and algorithmic beauty. If you have time for a pop quiz, this is a quick time to take a look at your screen. And I'm curious if you can determine which of these email subject lines was generated by AI. I'll give you a second to read them. So my question is, which of these was generated by artificial intelligence? Because you can ask a machine to generate subject line for email campaigns. Any of them? All of them? One of them? All right. Well, the answer was the first one. That email subject line was generated by AI. The rest of them I wrote. And if you weren't able to tell, it's because it's a hard thing to do. And 83% of the people surveyed across the US get this question wrong. And what we're doing is really doing the Turing test, which is the model was named after Alan Turing, the famous data scientist from World War II, who, if you can trick a human into believing that a human wrote something, then it passes, quote, the Turing test. But what we found is that 73% of consumers said they would be less likely to engage in content that they knew was generated by an algorithm. It's kind of wild. You think about like that consumers are saying, I don't really want to engage with a brand if that content was generated by an algorithm, but 83% of people can't even tell whether it was or not. So it's a question around algorithms, judgment, what we're going to do as brands. And especially in a world where everyone's got the same 24 hours, we're awake for 15 of them, we're in bed, hopefully for 9 of them, we're on our phone 4 hours and 30 minutes a day, looking through all sorts of things. We're on our phone for 1 in every 3 waking minutes, most likely on one of these top apps. TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook dominate our daily use. And there's a ton more out there, all these niche communities. So the question is, which algorithm are you creating content? So if the beauty is in the eye of the algorithm, and we need to serve those algorithms content that they think are beautiful or top performing, which algorithm are you going to behold? And each algorithm has different parameters. Algorithmic beauty in aggregate looks at what's driving revenue, what's eye-catching, encourages a swipe up, has lots of keywords in it, high quality score, authentic, it feels native, consistent, etc. Whereas real beauty, or what we believe as brands, it's undefinable. It's things like simplicity or pattern or rhythm or symmetry or juxtaposition. It's unique to me. And these things are actually in opposition of each other, because algorithmic beauty ultimately drives revenue, while true beauty is almost undescribable. It's in the eye of the beholder. And so we as marketers, we want to stand out, but algorithms want you to fit in and play by their rules. So if you take a look at these 5 Instagram ads and say, hey, which of these brands are these ads for? Could you name each of those 5 brands? Well, I'm guessing you probably can't, because they look so similar, but they actually represent 5 different unique brands. So why is it that brands who would say we have brand standards, we have a brand guide, we have a strong point of view, all are creating ads that kind of look the same? It's because we're trying to serve this algorithmic beauty in a way that performs and drives revenue. So the question for us and for you is, how can the brand stand apart? How do you stand apart? And we can do all sorts of analyses with algorithms, like when we took a look at e.l.f. Cosmetics campaigns and looked at all of their email campaigns next to their biggest competitors and ran a cosine similarity analysis. You can actually see which brands are most similar towards the bottom or least similar to those. And then take a look at, wow, Bath & Body Works, Summer Fridays, Hero Cosmetics, and Patrick Ta are most similar to e.l.f. Cosmetics from an algorithm standpoint when looking at all their emails and all their campaigns. Kind of wild. I wouldn't imagine that Bath & Body Works is anything similar to e.l.f. Cosmetics, but when a machine looks at it, it thinks it is. So smart leaders today know that they should be implementing AI. 70% of people agree with that. And good news, if you're on this live stream or even thinking about this, you're ahead of your peers. There's only about 30 or so % of people have actually started generating content, looking at AI as it applies to marketing. So you're ahead and you need to stay ahead. And that's what I believe. And what we're building at Backstroke is a way to generate the future of AI-driven marketing. And we'd love the opportunity to tell you more about how we can generate content. Hit me up if you'd like a demo, or I can walk you through some quick slides here that'll give you a little bit of a taste. The way that we might look at it is by looking at, in this example, we're looking at all of Perry Ellis's emails. And with our human eye, we can actually see here that they're using certain things over and over again. So there's a model of a torso up, there's a model of a full body shot, and then there's also some background images with heavy text overlay. So the machine can identify those things using natural language processing, using computer vision, and other algorithms to say, all right, here are your most commonly used colors, here are the dimensions within those emails. And then with Backstroke, you can actually say, all right, let's generate a win-back campaign to engage 3 audiences that were generated by Levain Community Detection to create a 20% off promo campaign. And this is what the Backstroke product looks like, where you can just take a look at, you can take a look at the way that you can quickly generate content pulling from your website, from one or many product pages. So the machine just goes and scrapes the content from your product detail pages. And then you say, this is the starred content. I want to be the hero. Press generate. And in a few seconds, it will generate the email using your header, your footer, and then the content coming from what we've learned from previous campaigns, along with anything else you're going to feed into it, into what we call our brand brain. And the content is personalized for each individual that's on the list, and then allows you to remix the content to try different variations of it, and then ultimately publish it and see the results. On average, our customers see a 31% lift in revenue per email because we're applying so many of the learnings on the AI-driven marketing front that we just reviewed. So I know I've hit a lot of information for you. If this is your lunch hour, hopefully I've given you some things to think about on the algorithmic beauty side and why beauty is in the eye of the algorithm, but humans really still matter. Would love for you to continue engaging with us. You can subscribe to our emails where we put out data like this every week. You can play around with free tools using our subject line generator or our analytics product at backstroke.com. Or, of course, I'd love to do a custom demo for you. So thanks so much for joining us today. Keep that whole idea of beauty in the eye of the algorithm in your mind, and hit me up at rj@backstroke.com if you have any questions or if I can do a custom demo for you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Wednesday.